All right, what's up, everybody? Brian here, and this is my Impact Wrestling review, or my recap of last night's episode. So let's get right into it. My thoughts on the show last night, or the episode last night. I thought it was a decent episode. We started off Impact with a match between Caleb Conley and KM, which was interrupted by the Machine, Brian Cage, who was looking for Johnny Impact after Johnny promised him that he would get the next world title shot. That apparently was going to Killer Kross next week when they are in Mexico. So that was a huge match that was announced for next week's episode. Cage didn't like this announcement. He basically said, "You know what? Where's Johnny Impact? You told that he promised me that he would give me the first title shot and all this stuff, and then find out that he's giving Killer Kross a title match next week and all this stuff." Then Johnny Impact would come out. Before he could say anything, he would be attacked by both Killer Kross and Moose, who got involved in last week's main event between Kross and Johnny Impact in that no disqualification match that saw Killer Kross pick up the win. They beat down Johnny Impact on the ramp. Then Cage would come up the ramp. He would grab Johnny Impact, throw him back into the ring. He was going to hit him with it, like an F5, but Moose and Killer Kross would come back again. Moose would spear Brian Cage, while Killer Kross hit a devastating Saito suplex on Johnny Impact and left them both laying. Then in a backstage segment, they had Brian Cage talking about what had just happened. He then challenged Moose to a match for later on in the night, and that was one of the big matches that happened on last night's episode. So a chaotic start to last night's episode of Impact, if you really think about it. We saw Ethan Page take on Eddie Edwards. This one was a really good back and forth. Eddie Edwards would get disqualified for using that kendo stick, Singapore cane that he calls Kenny, and that's what picked up the win for Ethan Page. The funny part about this match was Eli Drake. Before this match took place, he came out and sat at the commentary table and was actually really good on commentary. He was just basically talking about Eddie Edwards, that Eddie is he's turned to this hardcore lifestyle now. He wants to be part of the hardcore revolution and all this stuff that Eli Drake is trying to end. Eli then said about that Eddie Edwards was a fantastic wrestler. He was a former world champion, former X Division champion, former tag team champion. All this stuff, basically piggybacking off of what happened last week when Eli Drake interrupted an interview segment with that Eddie Edwards was doing. Afterwards, Eli Drake would basically challenge Eddie Edwards to dig way down deep and find the old Eddie Edwards, not the hardcore Eddie Edwards. He wanted the old Eddie Edwards. So that'll be interesting to see what turn of events and what comes next for this whole feud that seems to be brewing between Eli Drake and Eddie Edwards. Let's see. We heard from the Smoke Show, Scarlett Bordeaux. She announced the winner of her worldwide talent search, and no surprising, she picked herself. She basically said that she had done a lot in Impact in a short time, and she hasn't even been in the ring yet, as far as on the Impact Wrestling broadcast. So she then announced that she told the other knockouts to look out because she'll be getting in the ring soon. We'll see when that happens. So, but that was pretty much it for that segment with Scarlett Bordeaux. We had Jordynne Grace. She took on Allie. Not much to this matchup. Allie lost to Jordynne Grace, so Jordan picked up a victory. Afterwards, Su Yung would get in the ring when Allie was down, and offered, help her up. But then the lights would go out, and Rosemary, when the lights came back on, Rosemary would appear, and seemingly trying to get Allie to rejoin her, and the hivelings, as she calls her fans. So that'll be interesting to see what happens there. Let's see. We had Moose versus Brian Cage. This was a battle of two big guys, two strong powerhouses. Moose, at one point during this match, tried to deliver a chop on the outside of the ring to Cage, but Cage moved and he chopped the ring post. The finish of the match came with where Moose grabbed a steel chair from outside. He was going to use it on Cage, but Cage moved out of the way, and that would hit the drill claw and pick up the win over Moose. So getting a big measure of revenge for what happened at the beginning of Impact last night. We saw the X Division champion, Rich Swann, in action. He took on Trey of the Rascals. It was a fun match, a fun little matchup for these two. Rich Swann won with the middle rope 450. So a big victory for Rich Swann. Afterwards, OVE would come out. They would basically did the same thing Sami Callihan tried to do last week, trying to get Rich Swann to join OVE. So I'm a little intrigued by this storyline to see where this one goes. Let's see what else we had here. There was a backstage segment where Tessa Blanchard was being interviewed about Homecoming, how she lost to Taya Valkyrie. We did hear from Taya Valkyrie a little bit before this segment. She announced that next week in Mexico she will be medically cleared to compete because of what happened at Homecoming with Killer Kross powerbombing her into the crowd. So she'll be medically cleared to compete next week. Basically, Tessa went off on the interviewer, saying that if it wasn't for Gail Kim, she would still be Knockouts champion. Of course, Gail Kim was a big instrumental part in that Knockouts title match at Homecoming between Tessa Blanchard and Taya Valkyrie that saw Taya win the championship. She would then basically just get angry. She would go after the interviewer. She went after one of the stage people or backstage people, started choking her. When security came up and tried to stop her, she knocked him down, that being Tessa Blanchard. Then Gail Kim got involved. Basically, these two started going at it backstage, with Tessa getting the advantage and basically leaving Gail laying backstage. Then, after being separated, then they cut back to the backstage area where Scott D'Amore and Sanjay Dutt were trying to calm down Tessa. They were telling her that you need to calm down. You can't be putting your hands on officials. You can't be putting your hands on anybody. Tessa getting angry, saying she told them that, well, management shouldn't be putting their hands on her. Referees shouldn't be putting their hands on her. And basically Scott D'Amore is like, you know what? Fine. You know what? You're not going to have to worry about anybody putting their hands on you because you're suspended. So we'll have to see what happens with this situation going into next week. Which brings us to the main event of last night's Impact broadcast, which was OVE versus LAX, a rivalry renewed, one of the hottest rivalries in Impact Wrestling that was in 2017, and all those memorable matches that they had, including Barbed Wire Massacre and all those other ones that they had. Let's see. It was a good match. Pretty much, it was what you would expect from a couple of good tag teams in Impact Wrestling. LAX picked up the win. Of course, LAX are the current tag team champions. They picked up the win over OVE last night on Impact, and that was pretty much it. Then, when they walked backstage, they saw the Lucha Brothers. I don't remember which one it was. After the Lucha Brothers left, one of LAX said about that if they want another butt kicking, they can come, they can have it. If they want another match, they can have it. So that'll be interesting to see what transpires there, because that match between LAX and the Lucha Brothers from Homecoming was a really good match. So I really hope that these two teams face off against each other in the future, but we'll have to wait and see. So with that in mind, last night's episode I thought was decent. A lot of storylines continuing out of last week. It'll be interesting to see what happens next week in that main event match for the world title, Cross and Johnny Impact. So with that in mind, if you guys watched last night's episode, let me know what you guys thought of it in the comments below. This has been my Impact Wrestling review for last night's episode. As always, I am Brian, and thank you for watching.